Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first episode of Headline Busters, where we look at the internet and try to debunk claims that people are making. And this is the first episode and probably the last, because I don't know if we're ever going to do this again. But I just feel like a lot lately there's been articles that are being taken out of context and quotes, or quotes that are made up that need to be debunked. So yeah, we've got two main stories today. Let's begin. So the first one came out a couple of days ago that apparently in 2020 Apple is ditching the notch and the iPhone will no longer have any intrusive cutouts at the top of the screen in a mere year. Just 14 months away, they're suddenly gonna go from big giant notch with earpiece and multiple sensors for Face ID, front-facing camera, and of course that front-facing stereo speaker, and they're somehow just gonna get rid of it all. And then you'll just have one seamless sized bezel all the way around the display, so everything is more immersive. Of course, wouldn't that be nice? The annoying part of this claim is that they're taking a reliable leaker, Ming-Chi Kuo, and partnering it with another unreliable leaker who provided no evidence to back this up, and creating a headline to kind of fabricate reality so that you can put Ming-Chi Kuo in a headline that says iPhone is ditching the notch next year, even though that's not what Ming-Chi Kuo said. If you actually read into the article posted by Mac Rumors, you will see that all Kuo said was that in 2020 they will most likely find a way to shrink the notch down so that it is slimmer, either combining some of the sensors that make Face ID work, or somehow shrinking the camera sensor so that Apple is able to make that notch a lot less intrusive, which honestly shouldn't really be a surprise for a lot of you, given we know the 2020 iPhone's display sizes are changing to that huge 6.7-inch display, as well as that extra tiny 5.4-inch display. And hearing that the 2020 iPhones may have a 5.4-inch display means that, yeah, a normal sized notch on a phone that small would take up a whole lot of room and probably give you barely any ears, that it would be very, very difficult for you to still store the battery icon and the time up there. So the fact that in 2020 the notch will be getting slimmer, I don't think that's supposed to be surprising to anyone, especially given we've already heard iPhones are shrinking in size, notch would most likely get smaller too. But they're also partnering a different leak that we saw earlier about Apple ditching Face ID for a China-specific model with full screen Touch ID or Touch ID embedded into the display. And this claim, which we talked about as absolute bogus, because Apple's even running commercials right now advertising how much better Face ID is than Touch ID, and we've already seen from other releases like the Galaxy S10, embedding a fingerprint reader underneath the display does not save you money. That is just as expensive as a process of Face ID, and especially if they ended up going with Touch ID taking up the entire display, that would probably cost more than Face ID, given you haven't really seen that many other Android manufacturers producing displays with full screen Touch ID. Why? Because it's expensive, it's way simpler and way easier to just tell the user to place your finger in one spot. And as Apple keeps pushing Face ID, and you guys realize how much they love Memoji, how much they keep promoting Memoji. This article just says, well, since Apple's working on an iPhone that doesn't have Face ID, clearly that means there won't be a notch. Even though that quote is so ridiculous because nowhere do they mention or even bring up the fact that just because you're removing Face ID doesn't mean there's no notch. Even if you got rid of the biometric part of Face ID, you still have to have a camera, because the front-facing camera, particularly in iPhones, is used a lot for selfies, FaceTime, Memoji, which we talk about so much. And they're even bringing Memoji stickers to devices without Face ID. Do you think they would promote it this much and brag about how much better Face ID is in commercials if they were the next year just going to ditch the notch entirely and just go for full-screen Touch ID and say, you know what, actually Touch ID's better. Face ID may have these advantages we talked about, but nah, Touch ID, that's the way to go. Maybe if it was Google and they were okay with embarrassing themselves all the time with hypocritical marketing, but no, this is Apple. Usually they're pretty intentional about this type of thing. So just the quote of this unreliable leaker was so bad, given no Face ID means no notch. It's like, bruh, you still need a camera on the front. There would still be a notch even if they ditched Face ID, unless they somehow figured out to embed the camera sensor underneath the display, which is way more expensive. That technology is just barely ready for the market and most likely not going to be ready for a 2020 iPhone. So no, you should expect the iPhone notch to get smaller next year, but gone? Absolutely not. I'd say give it another 3 to 4 years before the notch is completely gone, as much as you guys may want that. The other stupid headline that was making its way around the internet this morning was Apple has canceled their augmented reality glasses. According to who? None other than Digitimes. Digitimes has a very bumpy track record with their predictions, and also is notoriously known for not really citing their sources, and this is no exception. If you go to their website and actually try to read the article, for one, they remind you that, hey, if you want to read this article, you need to have a subscription to finish it. So they're clearly asking for money as quickly as possible. And also, and I quote for the tagline, Apple has suspended the development of head-mounted display AR and VR headsets, which means the guy writing this article doesn't even realize that Apple was never working on VR headsets in the first place. At least this is the first time we're hearing about it. He's just saying like augmented reality, virtual reality, yeah, all that. They just canceled all of it, everything regarding reality. And already disbanded its team for the development of AR and VR HMDs, according to sources familiar with the matter. So they didn't even know who they talked to. It's just sources. Why should we trust you guys with this headline? Well, because you should trust us, because we leak things in the past. If this was Ming-Chi Kuo, who actually has a good track record and has accurately predicted a lot of things in the past, like Mark Gurman or Ben Geskin, then this would be a different discussion. But when it's just Digitimes going, nah, they canceled it and you should trust us, and also make sure to subscribe to that news database subscription because you gotta read all of our insightful articles. Look, I'm not saying that there's absolutely no truth to this. Maybe they heard some type of insider information and that insider basically said that a lot of employees were moved off from the AR project. But just like earlier this year, we saw 200 employees laid off from the Project Titan thing. But throughout the year, we're still seeing Apple pass more patents for car-related things. Bumpers being redesigned, and so are car doors. And they're also buying self-driving artificial intelligence startups. Clearly, Apple is still working on the Project Titan thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because they canned a bunch of people earlier this year, that the project is officially canceled. Unless Apple pulls an AirPower and just makes a statement and says, no, it's not coming out, then you shouldn't expect it, because these types of projects, especially product lines that haven't been announced yet, you know, the AR glasses is totally separate from the Apple Watch, the iPhone, and the iPad. There is so little we know about that development process that to act like you know when it's officially canceled internally is just ridiculous. And lots of other people like iDrop News have even tuned in to say, no, Apple has not canceled the AR development project because we've seen hints of it within iOS 13's code, which doesn't guarantee that it's coming out soon, but also wouldn't make a lot of sense if they were embedding AR device mentions within iOS 13 code if they were just going to cancel it anyway. Steve Smith on Twitter also brought up that seems unlikely. There was a huge amount of evidence from them in iOS 12 and only a couple months ago, so my impression was that they were coming even sooner than we thought, considering lead time for supply chain rumors. Hard to square this with that. Given Ming-Chi Kuo earlier this year claimed that the AR glasses could be entering production by the end of 2019. So maybe a design has been finalized, but maybe the rumor that Digitimes was reporting on was simply that there was a finalized design that was going to go into production, but they had some kind of issue in manufacturing, or they couldn't figure out how to build it well enough, so they had to push it back even further, and maybe the project's been delayed, and that involved taking a lot of people off the project and putting them towards more things. But it is insanely premature in 2019, months before the product has even entered production, to say, nope, project's officially canceled, they're not doing it anymore. And if you're trying to get clicks and you're trying to get traffic on your website, talking about AR glasses is a great way to do that, because we know that the tech is not ready and probably not coming out for easily another 2 to 3 years. So when it officially comes out, no one's going to remember how wrong they were way back in July of 2019. So if you wanted people clicking on your website, that's a very easy way to do it. And that concludes all of the headlines I wanted to debunk today. Let me know what you think of these rumors. If there's something I'm missing or you think I'm wrong, be sure to hit me up on Twitter or join our Discord. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you guys in the next one.